Because before we go on the air, it's like, hey, what's going on? How you doing? And I'm like, hello, how are we doing? Totally presenter voice. That's years in the radio degree coming out in me. Anyway, it's the Bankster DFS NFL Week 15 live before lock. I'm Doug Shane, Bankster 17. Joined as always by Michael Gudadero at the Big Gouda. You can find us on YouTube. Check my name out. Like, share, subscribe. Click the notification icon. We'll let you know when we got new videos coming out. NBA starts this week, so quite possibly some NBA videos coming out. And we go live every Friday night at 7 Eastern. Of course, not this week because it's Christmas. Though I do hear that there is a special treat coming for Bankster members Friday night instead of a live stream. I'll keep that under wraps for now, but there's a fun little surprise. A return, we'll say, Friday night, return of a popular feature at our site for Friday night. And then, of course, Sunday mornings, we're here live at 11:30. And as always, you can find all of our work for every sport that we cover. BanksterDFS.com/subscribe. $3.99 a week. Get you all of our articles, all of our player pools, and of course, the best Slack chat in the business where you get the two of us, the entire team, and we cover all those sports. We've got everything cooking right now. NBA is hitting, EuroLeague's hitting, college bowl season's coming up. We've got, of course, the NFL. NHL starts mid-January, and then, MLB is not too far away. Soccer, NASCAR, golf, whatever it is. MMA just finished up a great season. Looking to start back up for next year. Boy, Tay just kills it with that. $3.99 we get you everything. But it's NFL time. It is Sunday. It is football. And Gouda, you just hit me with really big news for cash game players right before we went live. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Say, how are you? And then let you tell us what you heard.
I'm good. I'm doing great here, and yeah, we got big Miami news. We already knew earlier this morning Jakeem Grant was out, and now it just came that both Mike Gesicki and Devontae Parker are out. So the Dolphins' offense is going to be without their top three receiving options. So that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there, because as we know, their backfield is limited. We're still waiting for word on Salvon Ahmed if he's going to be active or not. And we know Myles Gaskin is out. So really the Dolphins are down. You remember Preston Williams is also on the IR from earlier this season. So there's a lot of desperation there in Miami. I don't know what this offense may do today, but this definitely elevates Lynn Bowden quite a bit here. He's looking like he's probably going to be the number one target in the passing game, and maybe even more than that. If Salvon Ahmed is out, I mean, Bowden may even be technically the number one running back there. Not that I expect him to get any handoffs, but they could get creative with him and have him lining up in the backfield, potentially on passing downs as well.
I'm going to top your news. Ezekiel Elliott just ruled out.
Whoa.
No Zeke today. Tony Pollard starting for the Dallas Cowboys today at running back.
Wow. This
is why when we start the show, you see our faces buried in our phones, because we go live, of course, as inactives are announced. And I'm sure Good is going to go find a bigger announcement. But Tony Pollard, $5,200 going against the 49ers defense that's been giving up a lot to running backs. The last few weeks, they've been one of the worst teams in the league against the run. Pollard has looked better than Zeke. I like him over Jeff Wilson. If you pull up our cash pool, we've got Jeff Wilson there at $5,100. That's going to change to Tony Pollard. I'm not going to play Pollard over the big three at running back, but if you were fading one of them, Pollard is in play right now. I think I'm just updating this pool right now. $5,200 for Pollard. Difference. I still think I prefer Kenyon Drake, but I'm not 100% sure I do at that price, because the matchup's okay, and boy, Pollard can catch passes, and I mean, even with Zeke playing, Pollard had looked okay this year. He's getting targets, 5 targets the last 3 weeks. What do we do with this, Gouda? What do we do?
I mean, listen, last week Pollard had 13 touches, even with Zeke playing. I mean, Zeke hasn't been playing well, and he's been getting some of his touches, taken away from Pollard. I mean, there's probably a combination of things, but I mean, listen, it's highly probable that Pollard gets 85% of the running back touches this week. And we know that there's nobody. I don't think that. I don't think this
Dowdle. It's like Rico Dowdle. Is he? I don't even know what a Rico Dowdle is.
Yeah, I'd be really shocked if I'd be shocked if Pollard got, taken out because of game flow. Like, I guess the only way Pollard doesn't stay on the field a lot is if if San Fran is just piling on the points and now it's pass for the Cowboys and now they're running out 4 wide with Dalton Schultz out there, maybe,
when Dallas plays catch up, they always have a running back out there.
They do. They do.
And they'll pull them in depending upon the coverage to block, maybe if San Francisco will rush 6 or 7 guys, but they just don't do that. They don't run 4 wide with the tight end all that often. Like, I don't see Pollard coming out of the game much at all. He's going to get 85%, I think, he could get Christian McCaffrey like snap count. I'm not saying they'll beat Christian McCaffrey, but he can get McCaffrey like snap count. They don't have anyone else.
Yeah, and I think the big thing here to look at too is, all right, if you want to put, if you wanted to use Tony Pollard in cash because of the workload and because of his price and just how cheap he is in comparison, the big question becomes, all right, well then which of the 3 running backs are you fading? Are you taking out Henry, Kamara, or Taylor from your lineup, assuming you're using the 3 of them like I am? And then from there, where are you spending that difference in money? What are you upgrading at wide receiver? I mean, I think AJ Brown.
This is the move you have to make right here on screen. I didn't put my screen on, did I?
No, it's not. That's not up there yet.
I'm playing around on the screen and y'all don't do it because I forgot to put it on the screen. Well, here we go. We'll put it up there. We'll have the big reveal of what we need to do. See, this is where I got so excited, and I'm playing around with stats and showing you guys stuff, and y'all don't see it. This is the move you have to make. If you're coming off one of those running backs, this is the move you have to make in cash. You don't give up a stud running back unless you're getting a stud elsewhere. I just don't see the point in getting off of Henry or Kamara or Cook or Taylor if you're not going to find a way to get up to Kelsey. If you're doing it just to go from a Lynn Bowden to a Russell Gage, right? That's just you don't do that. You trade stud for stud, and Kelsey gives you a bigger advantage at his position over any other player in the NFL at their position. Now, we're not using him because we are core with running backs, but now we've got a running back in Pollard who should see 20 touches, who should see a ton of snaps in a game that he's going to be game script independent. It's not going to matter. So if you're trading out one of those stud backs, you got to do it for Kelsey. That's my flow on this. That's my opinion. Do you have a different opinion? I know I interrupted you on this one, but I think this is the way it's got to be. I had a big reveal without the screen on, so now you'll see it. So,
yeah, I mean that makes the most sense because as I was saying, on the wide receiver end, there's really nobody I'm confident on the wide receiver end for cash for necessarily paying up. The only guy that I would consider in there would be AJ Brown, because I think the matchup is unbelievable and the guy is just proven to be a number 1 receiver. But it goes to the same token. I wouldn't be confident having AJ Brown and Derrick Henry in my same lineup, though. So it becomes, all right, well then, if I wanted to pay up at a receiver spot and I decided it was AJ Brown, I basically got to come off Derrick Henry, and then what is that doing to the rest of my lineup? I think then at that point you're just making too many changes where it's not close to what it was, in the beginning, and now you're just essentially making a second lineup that you're doing. So yeah, I mean, listen, I think Pollard is viable there. I just don't know if we need to go squeezing him into the lineup because as we've what now?
The bomb dropped. Mark Ingram out for Baltimore. We all know I love J.K. Dobbins this week. This makes me love Dobbins even more. Whole cannoli.
Yeah. Wow.
I just think it's not quite Zeke out news, but holy crap.
Yeah, and I mean at that point, that's basically a healthy inactive for Ingram because he was active. He was active last week and didn't get any snaps. So now it's really down, Dobbins and Edwards, and that's very interesting there. But I mean, with Dobbins, I think a lot is the same argument that I was just making in Pollard. What running back are you coming off of? And as we're seeing with some of these inactives, there's enough value down there, and a couple of the other receivers that we've spoken about that you don't necessarily need to be coming off of these higher priced running backs for these value guys, unless unless you just have that feeling that this is the week Henry goes for 10 points and you rather use AJ Brown and you use one of these value running backs. That by all means, go for it if you've got that inkling. But I'm sticking with those three running backs there.
Yeah, I don't think I can make that move. Now, I did have a buddy who's been asking me all week long, and it's a season-long thing, but it goes to speak about kind of how I feel about this whole situation in general. He kept asking me all week in season-long, James Conner or Zeke Elliott? And I was like, I guess Zeke, but it's really close, and I don't know. Neither guy's playing well, and they're not being used the way I want them to be used. And now he just asked me, do I go Pollard or James Conner? And I, without hesitation, said Pollard. I think that goes to say just how poorly Zeke has been playing, and I just don't think he's very motivated this year. I do think Pollard's a strong play, and Big Matt in our chat room said, maybe you need to just put him in some GPPs, and maybe he's definitely a lower end guy in GPPs, and again he's in the pool, Pollard, and I like Pollard, right? We've been talking about him now for 10 minutes, but this Ingram news is like. There are other guys at that price point. Like this running back is kind of out of nowhere become kind of a strong position this week. Like we like our high end guys. We like Henry, Kamara, and Taylor. I think Dalvin Cook makes for a really good GPP play because no one's on him this week. We're fading Cam Akers. I think DeAndre Swift is a really good GPP play this week. But then in this mid range, you got Dobbins, who should be a real strong play. You've got Drake, who we like this week. Now you've got Pollard. I think David Johnson could be sneaky in a tournament. It's like, geez, where are we going to go with all this? So I don't think, because we're spending so high in cash at those running backs, I don't think any of these guys are really must plays. I prefer Dobbins of the group. He's my guy in that mid-range area at running back in a tournament if I'm not using one of those other three guys, particularly in a tournament. What's your thought on that mid-range running back area? Good. Is there a different avenue you're going than Dobbins? Is there somewhere else I should be looking? What mid-range?
Let me pull up the pricing again here. Sorry, I wasn't prepared with that.
That's okay. It wasn't on our rundown for
sure. Those mid-range guys, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a guy you need to consider. As I wrote him up yesterday. He really took another step forward last week. The numbers didn't really show it, but with the amount of snaps that he was out on the field and the usage that he is getting, Le'Veon Bell is not taking away as much as he was when he first got there, or even as a lot of people considered. When they signed Le'Veon Bell, the kind of thought around the NFL, the beat writers, and even like the fantasy industry was that Le'Veon Bell is going to get 40 to 50% of the touches here. And that just hasn't happened at all. Bell was just signed more as an insurance policy that, God forbid anything happened to Helaire, that now they have somebody to fall back on. He's really taken the ropes here, and everybody's going to try to be on the passing game in Kansas City and New Orleans. So Helaire, gives you a nice leverage spot there. And again, with the amount of work that he gets at that price, it's a very, very strong value. Now, there's really nothing there to say, well, he maybe has a 40-point upside, but at least with the amount of touches that he consistently gets and the amount of time that he's out on the field, the explosion is going to come one day. I truly do believe it. And, he's the last rookie running back that hasn't really burst onto the scene yet with their signature game. So it could potentially, be this one, again, with the amount that he's on the field and with the expected scoring from this game. And another thing, too, with these value running backs that we're seeing now, these like mid-priced guys, they actually, if you're building a tournament lineup, you can build a pretty contrarian lineup by using Dobbins, Drake, and Pollard all in the same lineup. You're now kind of at the point where the high-priced running backs are going to be the chalkier. So if you're making a contrarian lineup where you got those three running backs, and then you're paying up at receiver, you're not going to see a lot of lineups like that. So now this value has given us paths to use to use guys that are going to be lower owned, that are going to have just as strong a workload as the higher price guys are. Drake has really taken the reins in Arizona. Pollard, guys should see 70-80% of the work, and Dobbins, is kind of starting to take the rein there too. I mean, Dobbins always has the risk of losing some touches, or will lose touches to Gus Edwards. I mean, I don't know what kind of work, what kind of scoring Jacksonville is going to have this week. So, you've got you've got a chance there to be pretty contrarian.
Just throwing up some ideas on the screen there for what a contrarian lineup could look like. Maybe you come off of McLaurin and you move up to quarterback.
We've actually got some more news now, which is, I mean, I don't know what to make of it, but it's definitely going to affect something. The Saints put Winston on the list today, so that maybe makes Drew Brees a little more interesting, because maybe now they don't use Taysom Hill as much, because they don't have that fallback. If at least like in a worst case scenario, let's say something crazy happened where Brees got hurt and then Taysom Hill got hurt, they would have had Winston to fall back on. But now, you don't want to be putting Taysom Hill out there as much either. So now that maybe boosts Drew Brees a little bit there too.
Well, it's going to be the most important question I've asked all year, but have they checked close contacts of Winston, or do we have to worry about Brees and Hill? Is this going to be a Denver situation again?
We'll
be scrolling and looking at that.
Yeah, nothing on that yet, but that's an interesting thought. My guess is this is probably something that happened, not like right now, probably something that happened either early this morning or later last night. So I would assume Brees and Taysom are in the clear, because this is the first we're hearing about it. You can't make that assumption until we maybe hear something else too.
It's crazy, because if for some reason a situation comes out where the Saints, would have to lose Brees or Hill or both or whatever, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if it does, that changes a lot, right? Because we're riding Kamara, which is not as good with Taysom Hill starting. Taysom Hill, let's say he would have started, Brees wasn't, because he was closely contacted, because maybe Hill was spending more time in the special teams meeting and Brees and Winston were close contacts. Well, then Taysom Hill becomes a cash game option above or equal to Jalen Hurts, right? Because then we have that conversation to have. And then if all three quarterbacks were out for some reason, well, then we have to deal with maybe Kansas City isn't such a good stack anymore. And we're going to talk about Kansas City in a second. And that would dash my hopes and dreams. Like that would, oh goodness. Let's pretend I didn't bring up that potential situation. It's pretty crazy. See, Matt's got the right solution. They're just going to throw Brees in a Darth Vader helmet. He's fine.
Well, there you go.
Brees is great. So there's just nonstop crap coming out today. I hate 2020. Holy goodness, this is awful.
Yeah.
I want to get back to the original conversation we were having briefly about we were talking about the Miami situation. Let me clear this lineup here. I don't want anyone to think that's a lineup we're good with. I have a couple of thoughts on this Miami team today. And originally, Lynn Bowden was on my cash core, and listen, he's still in the cash pool. I think he's a decent play. He saw 9 targets last week, 4 the week before, so they were working him into the offense anyway. I do want to point out that Mac Hollins had 9 targets last week as well. Depending upon the site you're on, he could be cheaper than Lynn Bowden. Mac Hollins is a receiver by nature. He's all right. So if you watch him in college, if I'm not right, he played for North Carolina. I think he was a receiver in college, and he's been getting some work in the offense, and he did okay.
Yeah, and he had a couple of games over the years with I think he was with the Eagles, right, where he showed a little bit. But
here's the concern: rookie quarterback facing Belichick coach team. It's really possible the Dolphins just suck today. So that's a concern I have, which is another reason to pull these guys out of the cash core. I think they're there on Yahoo. Hollins is min priced, whereas Bowden is $12 as opposed to $10. And I wanted to spend up a little, spend to $12 at my tight end position. So I actually went Mac Hollins over over Lynn Bowden on Yahoo because of pricing. For the $100 difference here on DraftKings, I'd probably go Bowden. He's a more dynamic player, definitely better in the open field, though Hollins is better in the red zone. But I don't think either of them are a must play, which brings us to our first big point of the day, which we get asked a lot in our Slack chat. Who's our favorite punt wide receiver for cash today? I put 3 names in there: Greg Ward, Steven Sims, and Traquan Smith, because I think they're the 3 that have the chance to have the most work coming their way. Is there someone you prefer out of that group? Am I missing a name, Gouda? Like, where are we going with the punt receiver in cash? I'll pull the 3 guys up and I'll put them in a fake lineup here. Please don't think, if anyone's just joining us, that this is a lineup that we're running. We're just putting names out there so we can see them. Oh boy, this could get me in trouble.
So out of that list, my preference is going Steven Sims. And my reasoning there is because of what we saw last year with Dwayne Haskins. He developed some chemistry later in the year with when Sims came on and when Haskins became the starter, and we've seen that before with teams and with quarterbacks, ones that are starting the year as backups or are backups, and they come in and now all of a sudden, number 4 receiver kind of jumps to the front. Well, that's because they have chemistry from, playing with the number 2 or number 3s, running on the practice squad, these different things. And that kind of happened with Haskins and Sims last year. And when a guy like Haskins is as bad as he is, and I don't have to go into detail about that, we've all seen it. But they developed these safety blankets, and he had good chemistry with McLaurin last year. McLaurin was a little more up and down, simply because it's number 1 receiver, and whereas prices and all, it becomes a little more risky there. But also too, he developed that chemistry with Sims last year, and it was really strong for Sims. He became more of a touchdown guy too, and I do prefer him over Greg Ward, because I believe Sims is higher in the pecking order than Greg Ward is. We have no idea if Haskins is going to use McKissick like Alex Smith did. Is that part of the offensive game plan? Because Ron Rivera and his guys coming from Carolina last year, they used McCaffrey a ton. Is that how they see McKissick now? Is that built into the game plan, or is that just Alex Smith checking it down a ton, and that's more Smith than the game plan? We have no idea what's going to play out there with Haskins, and my guess is Washington's probably going to need to throw at least 35 times, because if Seattle puts some points up, it's going to be in Haskins' hands, and I think that opens it up for Sims. Whereas Philly may look to run it a little more, because let's face it, when you're facing a guy like Kyler Murray, you want to keep him on the field as least as possible. So you could see Ward, not get as many targets as Sims does. And also, too, I do believe Ward is further down in the pecking order than Sims is. Because, remember, in Philly, you got both tight ends are active now. You got Miles Sanders, who catches some balls. Alshon Jeffrey is playing over Ward. There's Jalen Reagor there. And they still have Fulgham. I know Fulgham has disappeared, but with all these guys, Ward essentially needs to get targeted every time he's on the field, and I'm a little more iffy of that happening than Sims. You make the argument, maybe he's the number 4 in the pecking order now, behind Cam Sims, McLaurin, and Logan Thomas, because I have no idea what McKissick's role might be. Because it's hard to tell if that's the game plan or if that was more of Alex Smith.
I've decided to choose. I like Steven Sims. I wrote him a lot last year in cash. I'm going with Greg Ward personally. The last 2 weeks, he's had 5 targets with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, and I do think he got the majority of these targets after Hurts came in the Green Bay game. Min price, I think, is too cheap for him. I just think he's a little bit better than that. He's had a number of games this year where he's come real close to hitting value on this price. Arizona, I don't really worry too much about their secondary. They're definitely not going to be focused on Greg Ward. They've been better against the tight end than they were last year. So that, downgrades Goddard and Ertz a little bit. I do think with Hurts being able to get out of the pocket, the playmaking will help him go to his outside receivers more, particularly a guy like Ward, who's proven to be a pretty good route runner. Plus, remember, Ward was a quarterback in college, so he was a scrambling quarterback, so he understands sort of the mentality there. And I do think that's going to help him get open on routes where the play breaks down a little bit. And I'm running Jalen Hurts as my cash game quarterback, and I don't love to stack in cash, but when everything else is equal, and I think it's pretty equal between Ward and Smith and Sims and some of the other guys in that range, when all's equal, I'll take the correlation because I do run my cash in a GPP, and I think if Ward and if Hurts is looking for Ward, and as he has, that makes a little bit of a difference, and I'm okay with that little bit of correlation. I might not do it with my studs, but if I can correlate a punt play to my quarterback and get some value out of it, and maybe double up the field a little bit, I'm okay with that. Couple bits of more news that I threw up on the screen. Damian Harris, we knew he was going to be out for about an hour ago, but we're not touching Sony Michel. We talked about it in our Slack. You can't trust Patriots running backs at all. I wouldn't touch any of them. Marquise Brown is in at $5,600. I really like him as a punt, not a punt, but a lower priced one-off kind of a deal, a mid-priced. He's better than that price. They're starting to get him the ball some more. And the Jaguars, when they have a receiver get 6 or more targets against them, that receiver goes off. I don't have the exact statistic, but that receiver has gone off if they get 6 or more targets. Well, Marquis Brown, since he pissed and moaned about not getting targets in the C game, which deservedly so, he should have been pissing and moaning. I mean, deservedly so at Harbaugh. It was a horrible game script because it was the right matchup for him to go off. He's gotten 22 targets over the last 3 weeks, scored a touchdown each of the last 3 weeks, and his price keeps going down. Somehow he went down to $5,600. I guess because he only had the 2 catches against Cleveland, but still had 6 targets and a touchdown. I love him as a one-off if you're not Dobbins. I don't mind using him with Jackson and Dobbins. So him being active is a real good thing. It does take guys like Des Bryant, Devin Duvernay, even Mark Andrews a little bit. It kind of takes them out of play, particularly for cash. Not playing Marquise Brown in cash, though he is, I don't know. I feel like he's kind of in that conversation for me at that mid-range, though we prefer Hilton and Ayuk. But it's, he's I think Marquise Brown's a lot safer than he's been. I think the target volume helps a lot, and the matchup is great. Mo Alley Cox is in, which kills Doyle. Doyle was in play for me at $2,800 with both Burton and Burton and Alley Cox expected to maybe miss the game. All 3 are active. I want none of them. And then Carlos Dunlap is in. I threw that down there for the Seahawks, and that matters because the Seahawks defense is a defense we like at $3,100 against Dwayne Haskins and the football team this week. Since Dunlap has joined the team, the defense has been stellar. They have put up a ton of sacks. They've reduced the amount of points per game they're giving up. They've reduced the amount of passing yards they've given up. And I understand they faced like the Jets, the Giants, the Eagles, like not the best teams in the world, but they're doing things. They've had 3 or more sacks in all but 1 game pretty much since Dunlap joined the team. They're turning the ball over. They haven't given up a ton of points other than the Buffalo game in Buffalo against, Josh Allen's amazing. So other than that, they've kind of done their job. They've been a really good defense. So Dunlap being in, I think, makes them more viable. Really like him. Really like the Seahawks as a play. If you can get up to that price, obviously we don't like to do that often. But that's about where we're at with the with that. That does lead into the one question of Sony Michel versus Dobbins. To me, that's all right. So really, it's not Michel versus Dobbins. If I read the question further, the way Sam has asked it, it's Michel and Taylor versus Dobbins and Miles Sanders.
Dobbins and
Taylor.
Yeah, but
I'm taking Dobbins and Sanders probably.
You have to. I mean, I can't. I can't trust Sony Michel in the least bit. I mean, we know how good the Dolphins defense is, and the Patriots offense is doing nothing. And I mean, yeah, their backfield is thinner now. It's really down to Michel and James White. I mean, who's that other back? J.J. Taylor? Is it? I don't know if he's active. Maybe Belichick pulls one of those weird things where Taylor ends up being the lead back, right? But overall, I mean, it's just so easy for Sony Michel to get, just to be out of this game. I mean, if the Dolphins are up 10-0, all of a sudden Sony Michel, it probably becomes closer to useless, and he hasn't done much. I mean,
nothing.
You need Michel to fall in the end zone twice. That's really what you need, and I don't know if the Patriots are going to be able to move it enough on the Dolphins defense. I mean, that game, the total I think is 40.5. That could be a game that ends up 9-3.
Yeah, I think even if he falls into the end zone, that's only 6 points, and he needs 13 to hit value, and it's a tournament. He needs closer to 17 to hit that, 16 to 4x it. Falls in the end zone, it's only 6 points. You get a 30 yards on top of that. You get 9 points. I mean, that's such a realistic stat line for him. I can't play. If the answer is Sony versus anyone, it's pretty much the anyone. It's kind of where I'm at on that one. It would have to be egregious for me to play Sony at this point. What's not egregious, that's a terrible transition, is Josh Hook. What's up, Hook?
Hello, guys. How are we doing? I can't.
Good morning. Let's pull this
Sorry,
down.
there's like a ticker over my face. I didn't know I was on.
No, I just went right to it. I'm firing away. We got Monster Leverage coming in with Josh Hook, one of our writers, our multi-sport, multi-talented writers, hockey, baseball, football. He does it all. And we've got our Monster Leverage GP pivots, and this week's got to be interesting. How much has the last 30 minutes thrown what you're thinking about on its head, or is this just par for the course and you were prepared for it?
New England, Miami just sounds so appetizing. I just heard you guys talking about it. So God, how gross is that game going to be?
That's the big game.
That game's going to be so gross. I wouldn't even I like Ahmed because volume, and I think Bowden, they make an emphasis for Miami, but there's nothing that's going to push New England's pace up. That's the case. Ahmed or Bowden probably had a really good start at their prices. Because I can't even name another offensive player for Miami other than Tua. But yeah,
I'm looking at this. Not sure how long it's going to take, but it could be a long time before Red Zone flips over to that game. We just might. They may come over and go, well, Tua's here, and it's Belichick versus a rookie, and that might be all we hear until halftime.
Yeah. If you're calling that game, how often are you going? Flores coached under Bill Belichick. We'll hear that 100 times.
That's the only good storyline. It's a terrible game. We spent far too much time in that game, so they're not going to show up as Monster Leverage for you today.
No, they're not. Like I said, Ahmed's in, right? He's officially active. I didn't get to see
he is. Yep.
Okay, yeah. I think actually that's kind of an interesting leverage play because I think the volume for running back ones for Miami is really solid, and I think he has it has been Gaskin or him, whoever's been in, has gotten 20 to 23 touches. And I think it's a softer matchup versus the New England run D, and I don't think there's any chance of them losing the run game in this. And I think it's a great pivot off Leonard Fournette at the same price point or pretty close. I think Fournette has a tough matchup it's hard to run against Atlanta. He needs some passing volume, and I think Ahmed's just a good one-for-one swap there, and you're just kind of different than the field.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your guys' take on that is.
I can't even imagine playing Fournette, or I can't imagine playing either of them. Oh, goodness. Fournette.
Well, that's how he was chopped.
Definitely not Fournette.
Let's go. If I lose to that, I'm done. I don't care. I won't even feel bad.
I would definitely be more inclined to use Ahmed over Fournette, especially too. We have the history there. Earlier this year when Ahmed was basically the last healthy back and the lead guy. He got the majority of the work. He was out there, rushing and passing down. So there's definitely a path for him, and I think it's much more viable than Fournette is.
If you're using Ahmed or Fournette, you've got to have a real strong plan of what you're doing with that money, though. You better be using a Kelsey or a Metcalf or someone that's going to be far above the rest of the field that is spend up. Again, we're not using Fournette or Ahmed just so we can go from Bowden to Russell Gage. That's not the plan that we need to have to get. You better have some big plans and pray. That's where you better be at. So you're stacking pacing. And let's hear that play out and here's where our leverage comes in. There's a segue. Bing, bang, boom.
All right. So I've seen basically what ownership is. Hill and Kelsey will have significantly more than Mahomes, but I want them both because I don't necessarily have Kelsey with Hill. That's just a lot, but I love I only think there's 2 to 3 games that are really worth stacking it all today, and I think the Chiefs New Orleans is one, and it's not that I love New Orleans; they're just so cheap. But like, I mean, if you go Mahomes, who will be probably the third to fifth quarterback in ownership, and then you bring in Hill or Kelsey. I've brought him back even with the third option. I like McCole Hardman as a cheap $3,200 or $3,400 pivot. And the reason I choose him over Robinson and Watkins is the routes he hits on are so much more profitable for you in like a ceiling stance. Like Robinson and Watkins are very volume driven for them to hit value, but Hardman just needs one play, and you get the kick or the punt return kickback on McCole Hardman. I mean, I'm not all in on him, but like I think I'm about 40% Chiefs Saints stacks today with a bring back on it. And the other really interesting way I like bringing this stack back, and this is my other cheap running back pivot of the day, same price as Salvin Ahmed. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this. Latavius Murray, with Drew Brees coming back, no Mike Thomas. We've seen Drew Brees. He can't stretch the field, so it's going to be a short passing game. And with Taysom Hill not playing quarterback, and Taysom Hill, I think he's had over 10 carries in 3 of the last 4 games, but they were trailing against Philly, so they had to go throw a lot more. So some of those carries should come back to Latavius. I mean, I still think Hill's going to come in and vulture 2 of my touchdowns today just because that's what he does. But, like, for 4,700 in a game where they're going to have to play slower if they want to stay with the Chiefs because I just don't think they can shoot it out, he has a ton of touchdown equity if they can drive the field because, I mean – everyone loves to run receivers back against the Chiefs, but for 2 years now, the Chiefs just don't give up a lot of points to wide receivers. I mean, that's what analytically, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, it is way harder to score taking a 13-play drive down the field to score than hitting big plays, and the Chiefs just eliminate them. So, I think that's a lot of touchdown equity at 4,700. And like we said, if Kamara is going to be chalk, like that's not going to work well because it just doesn't ever. You know, I mean, Kamara. You see the Taysom Hill package come in or the Josh Hill random guy come into or just some guy on the roster. We don't even know his name yet, but he's going to score a touchdown today. So
destroying my hopes here today, Hook, because I'm running. This is how I'm running it today because I don't think a lot of people are going to – I don't know. I don't want to pump myself up or anything, but I don't think people are going to have the balls to spend this much money on a stack. I just think this is a stack that's real expensive, but also – ridiculously high upside. I think individually each of these players is going to be highly owned, but I think as a stack, I just don't see people running it back with Kamara and with Hill and with Kelsey and with Mahomes. And I can make the argument for Jared Cook over Traquan Smith, but I am going for that big play capabilities with Traquan. We know Brees, he will occasionally take a shot down the field, and when he does, it is generally to Traquan Smith. I do think there's some danger in not using centers here, but I think this lineup, the way it's correlated, will be low owned as a stack.
I have this. I have every way this game can work going, basically. So if this game is terrible, I'm going to be in a bad mood. Like I have this exact setup right now I see on the screen. I've done it where I've pivoted Traquan to Jared Cook. And then I've kind of been flipping on my 3 to 3,500 receivers I like this morning. Like I have some Gallup. I like Kendrick Bourne a little bit as a flip off Ayuk.
Yes. Yep, love Bourne.
I love Ayuk too today. I think one of them really has an excellent day. And then, you kind of need a cheaper running back here. Another cheap one I like, Nyheim Hines. He's had a 10-point floor the last 3 weeks. And, with Holmes, Tyreek Hill, and Kelsey, I get they're expensive, but they have a huge floor. Like, they get a ton of targets. Like, the offense rolls through those 3. And the Chiefs are not afraid to go, hey, we're not going to run the football today. And they're okay with it. And, you put the ball in 15's hand and good things happen. But, that's a pretty good workload for a guy, right? Like, if he gets a touchdown falls his way, that's good for Nyheim Hines. Or you can
Hines, I'm just looking at that 10 points each of the last 2 weeks because we've been pumping up Taylor, which he's been great, but Hines has benefited too. He's been really good. That's why I have no interest in running any of the tight ends for that team because they just are so focused on those running backs and Hilton. So I'm with that. But getting back to the idea about Murray, I get the idea of Murray. The equity's there. I just don't know if the volume's going to be there. But if he gets 40 yards, let's say, right, 10 carries, 40 yards, but he gets 2 touchdowns, you're talking 16 points for $4,700, and no one will have him. if those are going to him, then they're not going to Kamara, they're not going to Smith, they're not going to Cook, they're not going to Hill. That makes some sense. I mean, listen, I think you got to stack this game all sorts of different ways. It's my favorite game on the slate, so I'm with you on that.
Absolutely. And I mean, like the Murray, I mean, it's a thin play. Like I have, 60% of Kamara in my heavily Chiefs loaded lineups today. So like I might as well bring one back where if Murray does go off, it is such a huge jump over everybody else because Kamara will be chalky and this game will be chalky. So it just.
And I think that's what people have to understand about this segment. We're not telling you, if Hook's saying play Latavius, it's not the play him in 80% of your lineups. It's if you're running this game 10 different ways, throw it in one or two lineups. But, we're trying to give you that leverage, the pivot off what you're generally running. That's the way that we're going to take a look at that. So I think it's important to understand, Hook will let you know if he thinks you should run a guy 80%, but he's, these leverage plays are throw him into a lineup here or there and take a different angle on this. I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you're not coming out here saying, listen, you got your one best lineup to go with. This isn't the optimal. Here's where you take a stab if you're running 20 lineups today.
Yeah, exactly. Or even when I do a 3-max entry, tournament, because I'll have some of that today, I want, in theory, one to finish last, one to finish first, and one to finish in the middle. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but it means I kind of – it's not hedging against them, but it's like if I'm having two Derrick Henry lineups, my third one will probably have an A.J. Brown piece saying Derrick Henry doesn't get the touchdown equity. And one will fail, but in theory, the other one will go way up, it's like an opportunity cost, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So the next game, the game I like that I don't think is going to get enough game ownership. I kind of like Trubisky in the Minnesota game to have some shoot to it today. You guys are. I don't think.
I do think Chicago is very viable. Gouda, what do you think about Chicago today?
I do. I'm liking that Chicago-Minnesota game, I think, to be more passing than running. Listen, we're getting to the point now with Dalvin Cook that he's up to 310 touches on the season. And, they've still got 3 games left to play, right? We got 3 games left to play. I mean, are they going to keep giving this guy 25 touches a game? And, I know that they still have an outside shot at the playoffs, so they're going to keep using him. But as you start to approach these 400 touch seasons, these guys wear out. And Cook, he's had some tougher matchups, but he's kind of starting to show the wear and tear a little bit. And I think as they gave him the contract, they start to look towards the future. Maybe they don't use him as much. Now, does that mean they work in Alexander Madison a little bit? Maybe. Or maybe it just means they pass more. I mean, they've got plenty of talent. It's limited, but between Thielen, Jefferson, and even Irv Smith, there's a lot of talent in that passing game. And the Minnesota defense is not the best. And listen, it's very possible too that we see Trubisky throw a little more. I think Montgomery's got a tough road for him against the Vikings as well. And I just think this could be one of those games where the passing games are the focus in it, and a lot of people aren't looking at the passing games here. So I think it's I think that's a good place to be at.
Yeah, that's kind of like the way I ran it. I was like, either I don't like Montgomery at all today. I have 0 Montgomery. He's priced too expensive, and I still know in my heart he's not good. But I think I have more Trubisky with Jefferson or Thielen stand alone. And I thought if you put them both together, you need to go Cousins, because for Thielen and Jefferson to pay off, Cousins definitely pays off, if that makes sense. And they still have a very targeted window of routes. Where the ball's going when they throw it. They're not throwing, except last week, no one knew it was going to the tight ends. But it's still going to Jefferson or Thielen. And there's a really good shot one of them gives you a ceiling score today. And I agree. I think Cook's breaking down. I think they're still going to ride him personally, just because they're fighting for the playoffs. And I think Cook actually makes a good one-off Kamara and Henry chalk, because we saw Henry last time he was kind of chalky, put up the 5 score. And I don't think he does that today. This is an ultimate smash spot. I have a lot of Henry, but Cook, you could put 5 to 7 catches in there, man. That's one of Henry's touchdowns. But then, catches are way more valuable to a running back than carries. It's like I think it's like 1.7 for a catch is the average score to 0.4 for a carry or something.
2.7. One target is worth 2.7 carries.
Is that it? Okay, all right.
So that's the stat. Yeah.
It's
a wild stat.
That's insane. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, 7 carries.
But that's why for that season I've been up and down with Henry because he's just not getting those targets where a guy like Cook, who's getting all the targets and similar carries, it's just the volume is so much greater for Cook. But this week it's Henry.
Yeah, and I mean, they both have the same red zone role. So if they're getting inside the red zone, you can do it. And, I mean, I like Trubisky too because I think A-Rob gets a little – I think the Minnesota defense is beatable. And if they get in a situation where they're down, I could see Chubb's has been good the last couple. I mean, he's not
a bad quarterback. He's just not a bad fantasy quarterback. He's Blake Bortles. He's probably a more talented Blake Bortles. Like there's nothing wrong with that for fantasy. He can't win a game, but he's a good fantasy quarterback. He's better than $500.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, I really kind of like the pay up spots at quarterback more this week, and he is my favorite cheap quarterback who won't have ownership today. I mean, yeah. And then the other game I like, I think Indy Houston. If you kind of load up on it, I think is a good way to be different because I think a lot of people just go 1 for 1 then they'll play Deshaun and Cooks or Qt. But I kind of like going with I want to bring it back with Hines, Hilton, or Taylor. I'm more on the running backs because this just feels like. Because everyone hates that 5 to 7 range of receiver this week, and Hilton chalk week always scares me. There's always routes the Indy offense fails. So whenever a player is going to be over-owned on the Indianapolis offense, I don't want to be on it.
Well, you have just destroyed every piece of my lineups today, Hook.
No. I mean, I'm leveraging. It's not. No, it's not.
Yeah, no, I know.
You play the chalk because the odds are it should go there, or not for cash or whatever, but
for sure. No, I'm just busting your chops.
Yeah, man. I mean, dude, last night I thought I was gold. I had like 5 lineups in the top 200 in the 20 max, and I was like, oh, at the end of the Buffalo game, I'm like, dude, I'm winning like $25 this week, and it's all coming down to John Tapp. Huda goes, that's a really hard play fading Aaron Jones. And I hated it. The one game, Devon hit 10, and he plays the whole game against Carolina, of all things. That's what really makes me mad.
I feel Aaron Jones, too. Like it was the right play. For a 2-game slate on a multi-entry BPP, the right play was to fade Aaron Jones, I think. On a single bullet, I think it was.
Yeah, no.
But he didn't play Josh Allen.
Yeah, I was so tilted. I turned off my phone because I kept looking at it every and then I looked at it 2 hours later. I'm like, oh, this is a bad night. I was not in a good mood.
What do you think on this game here? Because I think a lot of people might look at the Indianapolis side. They're the favorites. They're at home. They've been putting up 30 points, 8 of the last 11 games. But what are your thoughts of running a stack with Watson? Watson and maybe one receiver, someone like I like Hansen. I'm on Team Hansen. Hilton and maybe Taylor or Hines. So running it I like the Colts in this game, but running it with Watson as the quarterback instead.
Watson's my second highest quarterback right now. I think I don't even think they're going to try and run again. I just don't. I mean, I have all 3 receivers throughout and a little bit Akins. I mean, every time I have Akins, he just makes a disastrous drop in the end zone. It's just awful. I think the volume for Watson will be there, and he's throwing dimes. I mean, he looks great. The rest of his team's not great, but I mean, man, still throwing the ball 40 times, and he's ran for almost 40 yards, I think, the last 2 starts too. So, I mean, that helps a lot with this floor. If he gets you in the end zone, that's 40 and a 10 rushing, or 40 and a touchdown rushing. That's 10, and then he can pay off the rest of his salary easy throwing when you expect him to over minimum 200. I mean, the thing.
2 weeks ago against Indy, he did just that, 40 and a touch, and threw for 340. Didn't even throw a touchdown, but hit 20. I mean, imagine if he threw a couple of touchdowns, which could very well happen in this game. The Indy pass defense has been susceptible recently.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about the Indy, it's well coached, and their coverage is well coached. but they don't really have a pass rush. So, I mean, that'll give guys like Watson who, coverage will break down over time. It's just kind of the general rule of thumb. It's hard to run with a receiver for 5-7 seconds, So, and they run pretty safe routes. And I like all three of the receivers a little bit today. One should probably have a really good score. I think all three can hit if the touchdowns line up right, especially at their price points. But, I like Hansen. I've been on Team Hansen too, so that's generally my guy. But I have all three of them. So
he was so good in college too. I know I bring up college a lot, but the dude could play in college. Like he was playing at Cal, and he was always putting up numbers. Like he was always just open. He reminds me of Chris Hogan a lot. Just always open, pretty unassuming, kind of a wide receiver. Just not a guy who's going to blow you away, but just does what he needs to do to get the production. One guy that I've been kind of off of this week, but maybe I'm wrong in that case, is Kiki Qt. He's only had 2 games in his career of 20 or more fantasy points. Both have come against Indianapolis, so including 2 weeks ago. So something to think about with QT, that maybe he's a guy that as the receiver. I'm not really in love with Hooks. I don't know if Xavier Rhodes is playing. Did you happen to catch that, Gouda, if Rhodes is playing or not today?
I haven't seen anything about that, but I can look it up.
Okay, that'd be great. While you're doing that, we got a question in the chat that I will let Hook answer, because it seems like the kind of question that he would have an opinion on. As a mini stat, David Johnson and Chad Hansen, or Tony Pollard and Michael Gallup. I think I know where you're going with this, but I'm interested to hear your opinion.
What was the first name? It was, did I miss it? David Johnson and Hansen?
Johnson and Hansen, or Pollard and Gallup in a GPP.
Is Zeke out?
Zeke is out. Zeke is out, and Duke Johnson is out. So.
Oh, well,
it's close.
Yeah, man, that's tough. I just don't like David Johnson.
So funny. I was thinking the same thing. My hatred for David Johnson this year.
I think Pollard can make plays. Now that I know that Tony Pollard has game today, I'm gonna go throw him in a few or make more.
When in doubt, make more lineups.
Yeah,
That's the Bankster. That's the anti-bankroll preserving Bankster philosophy. The one anti-bankroll move I've been living off of for my whole career. Make more lineups.
Yeah, man, I'm a really sharp bankroll manager until I want to make 20 more lineups.
But you're new like this, you're like, well, I don't want to change any of my lineups. Let's just make more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Rhodes
is active.
So that makes Cooks a little less attractive to me. So that's where QT and Hansen would be the better plays in my mind. But it's not good enough, I don't think, to take over Pollard, Gallup. I just think Gallup's the best player of the 4, or at least has the highest upside. If you're running a GPP, I'm going to take the best upside guy, and that's Gallup in this respect, because the running backs are about equal.
Yeah, that's what I think. I like Gallup. I have some Gallup this morning. I think it's a good pivot off. People are going to try and find $3,000 receivers, so they're going to need to. Pricing's a lot tighter. I think
Gallup's going to be a little chalky today. I think it's going to be a little chalky at that price. As chalky as a 3,500 guy can be in GPPs, I think he's the biggest and possibly best name at 3,500 or less, which is why I'm not really considering him too much, because I'm not running a lot of GPP. I don't love this week for GPP. I'm definitely more cash boat this week. But I definitely think this is I think Gallup might be a little chalky, but I do understand why. I'm not opposed to using him.
Oh, and I think one more thing I got, because now that I have Pollard, I got to go figure into stuff. Don't forget to I like running Henry back today with one of either Jones, Hawkinson, and or Swift. I really like Swift, but I think
Swift's in a great spot.
He is, and the thing with the DFS community is Stafford playing this morning is when we found out that makes the Detroit offense as better as a whole than Chase Daniel, right? And I'm not playing Stafford per se, but it just gives them more ability to move the football on different levels. They can throw it deeper to Jones, they can throw intermediate to Hawkinson, and Swift just has his normal role. And I think it just gives it a better. Originally, it was just me play Derrick Henry, but now I think bring it back with the Lion, because I don't think ownership is going to pivot to how much of a boost that is to the Lions' offense. And again, Tennessee's defense is terrible. It is not good.
They funnel to the outside receiver. Marvin Jones is a downfield threat. And he's had 32 targets in 3 weeks. Like, his volume is there. He hasn't done anything with it other than the Chicago game, and that was late in the game. He hasn't done anything with that volume, but the volume is there with Galladay out. Like, Jones is going to get targeted in this game. And at $5,700, he's a guy in that mid-range who makes for a really interesting one-off play.
Yeah,
or as a run back.
Yeah, and also too, the Detroit Tennessee game, the total is now up to 53.5. It's the highest total on the slate. It's higher than Kansas City, New Orleans now.
I do not have enough of this game in my life right now.
Oh man,
what I do, my head goes down for 5 minutes as I make more lineups, and I ask Guda a question I know he'll talk about for 5 minutes. And that's what I'm going to do.
I got to go get a Tennessee passing game lineup loaded because now I think with Stafford playing, there's a shot, it's maybe 20% chance that Detroit scores, Derrick Henry fumbles, or someone screws up, and then they're up 2, and then it sends Tennessee passing. It's to do a pass game, and then you're whatever. It's just a good leverage spot. I mean,
yeah,
that's the kind of lineup though I put in a huge field tournament. I'm not putting that in a 300-person high buy-in tournament. That's more of I'm trying to leverage 100,000 people with this lineup.
I think it's a good lineup to use as I'm slowly but surely building it in my head here. It's not in my head. It's there. It is. It's getting built. Because I think it makes a lot of sense. I think this is interesting. I got some interesting takes on interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Hook. I'm gonna put my phone down for a second and wish you well in your endeavors today. I know you got to go make some more lineups. Thank you for giving us time today.
Yep.
And hitting on these games that you like and these one-offs. Guys, you can find Hook at banksterdfs.com. He's always in our Slack chat. He covers a lot of different sports, and he's super friendly. Also, if you like sports cards collecting, he's a big collector, as is Guda, and I'm not quite as big as they are, but we got a whole bunch of guys who do that as well. So come check it out. $3.99 a week, banksterdfs.com. You get all of Hook's work and everyone else's work as well. Hook, thank you so much. We will catch you. I'll see you in Slack, I'm sure, in about a half an hour.
Yep, I'll be there.
All right, see you, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we got some questions here up in the chat that I'm going to throw. I'm going to throw this one your way, Guda. Zach wants to know, for cash, Henry and Kmet or Fournette and Kelsey?
Oh, definitely Henry and Kmet. I don't think that one's even close.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. And I didn't think this is going to be the question that made you talk for 5 minutes. That was a pretty quick one. Just don't trust Fournette. I just don't. If you're going to get to Kelsey, that's cool. If you're going to fade Henry for Kelsey, but you've got to find a better running back in that position, I think.
Yeah, at that point, if you want
Fournette, I don't want Fournette. If you're going to use Fournette, it's what you have to do to use Fournette. Fournette is there so you can use Kelsey. I'd rather use Ahmed. I'd rather try to find a way to get to Pollard.
Yeah.
I can't. Jeff Wilson even. I don't want to use Fournette. But again, if you're insistent and you love Fournette this week, if you're a believer, and it's okay if you are, it's got to be to get Kelsey in your lineup. That has to be the only reason you're using Fournette this week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I fully agree. I mean, the workload may be there for Fournette. I just don't have any reason to believe that it will be. And again, as you spoke about on Friday, he was a healthy and active last week in favor of LaShawn McCoy. So, I mean, that says a lot of, I think, what you need to know. And I'm assuming that McCoy and Keyshawn Vaughn are both active today. So listen, maybe it's a three-way backfield there. Maybe they're all split in time, and Fournette only sees 40% of the snaps. Probably not getting you to where you need to be, even at a very low price point at $4,700.
Agreed. I don't think I just can't. Yeah. Let's see, where are we going next on here? We kind of talked about KC New Orleans, and Hook gave me the reasons to talk me out of it. Favorite game stack, game of 48 or less. I've got Chicago. We talked about them a little bit. Any love for San Francisco, Dallas, or the Rams today?
Not particularly. I mean, some of the pieces in the San Fran Dallas game, but not as a whole, like for a game stack. San Fran's defense has been playing a bit better, and I don't know what to expect from Dalton against them. And if Shanahan and San Fran has it their way, I think that they're definitely going to try to run it more than they pass it. And with how the Cowboys defense is, I mean, it's very possible Mostert and Wilson run all over them, and Mullins doesn't throw it too often to make kind of a game stack viable there. So I don't really have much interest, like I said, except for a couple of pieces. I do have Ayuk, Wilson, and now Pollard sprinkled in, just because I think they're three strong plays there. And then on the Rams side, I don't know. I kind of don't know what to do with it, simply because I don't know how, it's hard to say which way this game is going to play out. Are the Jets going to be able to put up 14 points to make the Rams keep the pedal to the metal? Or is this going to be, it's 28-0 in the second quarter, and, now Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson are working into, the carries just to kind of run the clock and get out of there type of game.
Do you think Cam Akers has gone from chalk to GPP potential, though, with the Kamara emerging? Like, do you think the standard build right now is going to be Henry, Taylor, and Kamara, or is this something we're doing alone at Bankster? I haven't gotten a good enough feel across the industry if Akers' ownership is now flipped to where he could be a GPP play. Because I would use Akers if he was going to be low owned. He was supposed to be super high owned early in the week, but then the Kamara, the Breeze news came out, so Kamara became useful. I mean, and now with Pollard being potentially high owned play at the last minute, is Akers a GPP play now?
Oh, I think the whole week he was definitely a GPP play, because I mean, again,
his ownership was too high.
Yeah, his ownership was, and I mean, it sure looks like it should be coming down because of from the news, the past couple of days, and especially this morning. Now, I think there's going to be the tendency people kind of look at the high price guys, or like those lower range guys, and those guys in the middle, like, Akers could be looked over a little bit. And if that happens, yeah, Akers becomes very strong. But again, I wouldn't go crazy on Akers, even if he is going to be only 10% owned. I still wouldn't go too crazy on him, because again, this can very easily turn into that Jonathan Taylor game from week 3 with the Jets and the Colts. There's the Jets are so bad. There's lots of ways to score on them, and with the way the Rams defense is playing, I mean, it wouldn't completely shock me if the Rams score a defensive touchdown and into the, a ball gets, the Rams moving inside the 5, then it's Malcolm Brown getting the goal line carry. Goff throws a touchdown to Tyler Higbee, throws a touchdown to, Cooper Kupp. Like, it's very easy that Akers can disappoint this week, even in such a strong matchup, because the Jets are just so bad in every facet of defense and even special teams that, the Rams can be putting up touchdowns in any which way today. So it makes it, to me, it just makes it a little hard to use them as a stack, or using Akers. I mean, if you're making multiple lineups, I definitely think you need to have some of the exposure there, simply because, it could just be one of those things where, yeah, if Goff throws 4 touchdowns, it could be 2 to Woods and 2 to Kupp. You can very easily see it that way as well. I just think there's so many different options of where it can go, that in the game is not very competitive, that that the Rams just end up disappointing. And I think on the flip side, in the alternate universe where this game is competitive, I don't think it's competitive because the Jets are putting up 21 points. I think it's competitive because the Rams offense falters, and it's a 17-10 game in the third quarter. And now your Rams lineups are really, busting at the bottom of the standings. So I think, yes, multiple lineups, some exposure to it, but don't go crazy that it's your highest owned stack of the day.
Agreed with that completely. Boy, a 17-10 game on 2 Jets defensive touchdowns would be delightful for so many of my lineups. Brandon asks a question. Doug's, I guess that's for me. Trash to gold QB of the week. Let's see if Gouda knows who he thinks my trash to gold QB of the week is this week. Who is my trash quarterback that I'm going to tell people to play in a GPP? I have mentioned this quarterback a couple of times between Friday and today.
So a guy that you will play, not a guy that you're going
to. I would. I'm just not making a ton of lineups this week, but I would like to play. I think has some value that no one else is going to play, that I know you wouldn't play.
It's probably got to be. I would say it's either Trubisky or Minshew.
It's neither of them. Oh man, I thought we had that mind meld going. It's my boy Nick Mullins.
Mullins. Okay.
I do love Mullins. I'll tell you who it's not, and this one's for our buddy Sean. It's not Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins is trash. Don't play him. That was a special request from Sean because we know when I trash someone, they do well. And I don't know if I just double reversed the curse, but seriously, no, don't play Dwayne Haskins. Like, oh God. No, it's Nick Mullins. I mean, Nick Mullins, dude just puts up yards. I mean, look, 247 in every start, 238. I mean, look, the guy puts up a ton of yards. He has that one game with 200, but he puts up yards otherwise. He's not a huge, touchdown guy. He's not going to put up, 380 and 4 touchdowns, but 250 and 2 touchdowns, that's doable. And if you got Ayuk and Bourne and he throws one to each, maybe he throws a third touchdown. Like, Dallas is not good. He's $5,100. I mean, look at what you can do with the San Francisco stack. You throw, I'll throw it out there if I can get my buttons to click. My buttons don't. There we go. Let's throw this Dallas San Francisco lineup out there because we always love terrible lineups out there. I will not make a jet stack, by the way, today. That is off limits. There is no jet stack to be made. There's no argument for the jet this week. If you throw Mullins and Ayuk and Bourne and Gallup out there and you throw, let's say we're not going to spend up too much on defense, and you've got yourself, let's say, we'll look at the Falcons, but we could pivot if we have the money up to Seattle. I mean, you've got $7,000. You know what you can do with $7,000 per player? You can get Travis Kelce in your lineup. You know what you can do with $7,000 per player? You can go get Kamara in your lineup. You can get a Dalvin Cook in your lineup. And that leaves you $4,300 in the flex to do whatever you want with that $4,300. I'm not going to finish that up, but hey, look at that. There's Emmanuel Sanders at $4,200. Chad Hansen at $4,200. You want to go down to $3,300 or $3,500. You've got, you move up on the Falcons to the Falcons to the Seahawks, and you got yourself a great lineup, I think. I mean, listen, San Francisco, Dallas has to shoot out a little bit, but you've got 3 top guys at other positions. This is doable. So that's my trash to gold quarterback of the week is Mullins. I like that lineup. I like Mullins. I have a Mullins issue, I suppose. I think he's gonna be all right. I think this game. I I selfishly would love to see Ayuk have a huge game. He's a cash core play, so I want to see that. And if that means a Mullins lineup turns out well, good for that. I'm not gonna scream and yell, go play this lineup, but I don't think it's the worst idea.
Listen, if there's a week for Mullins to have a ceiling game, it's definitely against the Dallas defense. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Plays well against Dallas. I want to see, I'd like to see him do well. I'd like to see this game do well. I think it's gonna be really low owned. Of all the games, going back to our other conversation about favorite game stack or favorite stack from a game with a total of 48 or under, I do like Chicago, but give me San Francisco. Give me San Francisco as a game with a total of less than 48 that I think could break a slate. And I've been trying to run this the last few weeks. We tried it with Dallas and Cincinnati last week. I think that was last week. And we've tried that, and we tried some of these games. They don't always work. There's a reason, it's kind of a gamble going against a game with a low total, but you want to leverage the field. You want to do something unique, and it's not like we're running garbage out with them. We're using that value, right? That's the whole point of value in fantasy. Is if you're going to spend down, you better have a damn good reason that you're spending down, and that means you're spending up somewhere else. We're going to get the best tight end in the world, and we're going to go get ourselves a running back, a high-end running back that's not going to be chalk. Well, so we pivot from Henry to Dalvin Cook because he's going to have no ownership today. And if he goes and has a Dalvin Cook game where he puts up 40 points and Kelce puts up 35 points, you've now put yourself in a position to win a GPP if San Francisco Dallas shoots out a little bit. If that game gets up to 60 points or 55 points or hell, even Mullins throws for 303 touchdowns to your guys and Gallup goes 8 for 100 and a touchdown, you've now put yourself in a position to win a GPP. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to win tournaments. We're not building GPP lineups to min cash. You're not going to go into, whatever it is, the safety or the spy or any of those tournaments to try to win, it's the $12 single entry. You're not trying to win $24. You're trying to win the $10,000 first place or whatever it is. That's what we're shooting for, right? So build a lineup that's going to do that. But you don't build a stupid lineup. Like, again, we're not going to build the Jets to do that. There's not a story I could tell that makes me feel comfortable running the Jets against the number one pass defense in the world. There is a story I can tell that Nick Mullins, who is a far more prolific passer than we all realize, with a couple of wide receivers who can do the job, and a Gallup who has been a highly targeted punt receiver all year long, there's a story to tell that game, goes 31-24. 31-24 in that game. San Francisco puts up 4 touchdowns, and Gallup gets 1 or 2 of the touchdowns for Dallas. You're in the money. There's no avenue for the Jets to put up 31 points this week. So you've got to be smart with your leverage, but to me, that's a smart leverage play. Is it likely to hit? No. That's why it's low owned, but it's in play. And that is Doug's rant for the week.
There you go.
It's coming at some point. I had to do it at some point. Tampa Bay, Atlanta. I can read. That's why I teach math, guys. Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Are we sleeping on this game? Is everyone sleeping on it? Don't hear anyone talking about it. Hook didn't bring it up in leverage. I don't hear anyone in the world talking about this game. Shouldn't more people be talking about it? I'm not talking about it.
I mean,
are we wrong? What's up with this game?
So, yes and no. From the Atlanta side, I don't know how good the offense is going to be yet again. I mean, we talked about it last week, we're talking about it again, to death. Matt Ryan is just not very good with Julio Jones out. We talked about it on Friday that, the Falcons' receiving production last week was all Gage and Ridley. Both of them had good games, but Ryan only threw for 220 yards.
Sounds like the start of a stack to me.
I mean, maybe, but at the same time, Tampa's defense looked a lot better last week. I think Tampa has maybe figured out some of the problems that plagued them. But also, too, I mean, if you take into account with Tampa's defense, playing bad, well, one of those recent games was against Kansas City, and, I don't know if the 85 Bears can stop Kansas City, It's just one of those things where maybe Tampa's defense is not as bad as they were playing or what some of the scores looked like. And on the flip side of that, I'm with the Tampa Bay side. Yes, I think because of Ronald Jones being out, that this could be one of those games that Brady throws it 45 times because Brady's, short to intermediate routes are the passing game like we've seen the past 2 years in New England. So I think it could be something that, yes, maybe it's very simple. You just use Brady as a naked play and you find your correlation elsewhere. Maybe you can add in Russell Gage there because he's cheaper, and I'm a little more concerned about Ridley and his price point of where he is, and if Tampa, does single him out to stop him. I talked about in my article too that if you want to run Brady with somebody, I'm actually this week looking at Mike Evans. We were on a different page last week, and it looks like we're maybe on a different page again. I still think Godwin's the number one receiver there because he is leading with receptions and receiving yards, but Mike Evans looks more and more like the upside guy there. The past 4 weeks, he's led the team in touchdowns, air yards, and actually I think targets too. So with that's all the stuff that you want to see for an upside play. So I think if you're using Brady this week, I would either do it naked or roll it with Evans. And if I'm bringing anybody back, I'm more inclined for it to be Russell Gage than Calvin Ridley.
That makes sense to me. I mean, I understand that the philosophy behind that. And again, I don't love this game either. And I think what we talked about on Friday is what it really holds true is that even when Matt Ryan's having terrible games, these guys tend to do okay. And look, I don't know if I'd be willing to go this deep with this game. Maybe you just do this, and now you've got yourself a little bit of exposure to the game. You get Ridley out of there. You got a little bit of exposure to the game. You have a decent amount of money left over. You run Seattle as your defense, or someone else cheaper. You run that, and then you've got a decent amount of money to spend elsewhere. You run it, and then you're in good shape. Hell, you could even run Gronk in the stack because Gronk, Atlanta's terrible against tight ends, and Gronk is getting targets, and now you got a real decent amount of money to spend elsewhere. This is playable. This is the kind of playable lineup. I think there's a reason we're not talking about this game, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Atlanta kind of sucks, and Brady can't really get down the field as much as we want him to, and none of the Tampa receivers have done anything. The game's got a total of 49.5, and we know these offenses are capable if they're playing up to their full potential. They just haven't. So I just think it was worth talking about a little bit in that respect. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I agree that it's not a game that we're going overboard on, but it wouldn't shock me if it hit its total or went a little over and some players had productive games. What game on the slate do you think is most likely to surpass its expectations?
I think Detroit, Tennessee.
Yeah. Even as the highest total game on the slate?
It is, and again, it feels like that game that nobody's like talking about as it being the highest total. I mean, it's moved because of the Stafford news, of course. But even with Golladay not there, Detroit does have some weapons. Tennessee's defense is really bad. Hawkinson, TJ Hawkinson's basically been the number 2 tight end this season. He's had an excellent year, and it's been very quiet. And DeAndre Swift, I think now is kind of back to full health and could regain more of that workhorse role. And if Tennessee's putting up points, Swift will still be out there for passing downs. And we touched on Marvin Jones. I think Jones is primed for a good game here. I mean, that could be one, maybe a little bit more of a quieter shootout. I mean, again, if you're using Tennessee, I think bringing it back with a Detroit player or two is a pretty solid idea.
Is it Quintez Cephas? Is it time? Is it time for Cephas?
No.
All right, we're gonna ask every week. It started kind of a thing last week, and I'm just gonna ask every week: is it Quintez Cephas week? I mean, if it's not this week, when's it gonna be? Right? Because it's a great matchup for them. Tennessee gives up a lot down the field. But no, it's not Quintez Cephas week. And so again, for the second week in a row, I will say lock button 20 points because we both put him down and the curse is real. This hasn't worked for Cephas yet. I have 0 Cephas. For whatever it's worth, I have 0 Cephas and I will not have him this week. But hey, someone's got to catch the ball. Your infatuation with TJ Hawkinson, I get it, but it also scares me because I don't think a week has gone by. You haven't talked about TJ Hawkinson, and rightfully so. He's putting up some points. I don't know. I may have to contact his family. Know that you have a little bit of an obsession with Mr. Hawkinson. The president of the. I have to see if there's a Hawkinson fan club out there that we can either start or make you the president of very quickly. I think this mid-range. I mean, tight end's just a dumpster fire, so I don't see why not Hawkinson either. Like, I'll talk bad. I mean, the other end, who else is there? He's $3,000 almost less healthy. So I mean, you're saving a lot of money.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, Hawkinson hasn't really had like that explosive game where he's gone 4 to 5x on his salary, and I don't think he will. But still, he's been consistent enough that he's going to give you that 13 to 15, 16 point range. And again, from the tight end position, if you're getting a guy that's giving you 3x at the tight end position in a tournament, that's a big win because not many tight ends are doing that.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I watch the scroll on the bottom of Red Zone every week, and they're like top tight end plays, and it's like Kelsey, 35 points, next highest 12. Like if you're getting 12 to 15 out of a tight end, and Hawkinson's been doing it. Is this the week Andrews goes over 20? Is Andrews going to get back to 20 this week at 5,500? That just seems a tad low given the matchup and the lack of practice for some of the other receivers on the team. Like I love Marquis Brown, I love J.K. Dobbins. Can Mark Andrews have a good game too? Can all three have a good game this week?
I don't know if all three can, but somebody's going to. I lean more towards Dobbins. But if I was picking one person in the passing game, I would pick Andrews.
I went Brown over Andrews just for the shock play. Like I think Andrews is more likely to get you 2 touchdowns, more likely. But I think Brown is more likely to break the slate. I think his ceiling is just higher than Andrews in my mind.
Yes.
So Andrews, if there's any tight end on the slate that can put up Kelsey-like numbers, it's Andrews. He just hasn't.
Yeah, he hasn't this year. I mean, the Ravens' offense has not had the efficiency that they did last year, and a big part of that was Andrews. Jackson was finding Andrews for touchdowns all the time, and the guy was getting 5 catches for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he was putting up these massive weeks, and we're not seeing that now.
If this offense looked like last year's Ravens, this would be a slam dunk chalk stack of the week, and it's just it's going to be chalky, but it's not going to be the mega chalk it would have been had this game happened last year. And I think there's some value in that. I do think there's some value. I've got a lot of Ravens as one-offs or mini stacks, a lot of Ravens exposure today.
Yeah, and
because they're underpriced because of it.
I think this is going to be it's got a good chance to be a statement game for the Ravens. After that win Monday night, they're really fighting to ensure another playoff berth and all that. And I think against Jacksonville, they have a chance they can come out and say, listen, the offense is fine. We figured it out. And, they kind of roll for 40 points. I think there's a chance of that. But listen, there's also Jacksonville. Let's not forget, Jacksonville is just terrible. So there's also a good chance, too, that we see Baltimore steamroll them. But do we see a defensive touchdown or two? Do you see Gus Edwards steal a touchdown? And listen, it's also possible too that the only viable offensive weapon for Baltimore this week is Lamar Jackson.
It's true.
I mean, listen, Lamar can run for 130 with a touchdown and throw for 150 and a touchdown, and that helps nobody but Lamar.
And there's a reason. There's a reason Dobbins is the most expensive skill player at 5,900. Like, none of these guys are above 6K. And honestly, Brown, if he plays at his ceiling, he's like Tyreek Hill. Andrews at his ceiling is like Kelsey. Neither are as consistent, but they both have that talent. I mean, Brown to me is a 7,500 guy at his tippy top, and Andrews is approaching a 7K guy. I just think that makes them really good tournament plays. But your point is so true. You can't even consider him in cash because this could just be a game where Lamar Jackson puts up 40 points and no one else puts up more than 12. And, if you stack this game, you're sitting your thumb up your butt because all you got is because you got Jackson and a bunch of guys who – Marquis Brown gets outscored by T.Y. Hilton. Mark Andrews gets outscored by Hawkinson. Dobbins gets outscored by Pollard. Like, none of that is unrealistic.
Yeah.
Even with Jackson being the highest scoring quarterback on the slate, which I think is entirely possible. I think it's well within the range of potential outcomes that Lamar Jackson's the highest scoring quarterback on the slate. I think he probably has the highest probability of being the highest scoring quarterback on the slate.
Oh, yeah. And, we saw it multiple times last year where it was better off playing Jackson naked than in a stack. And I think we're kind of at that same conversation again.
I think we are. And that is the end of this conversation for the day because I'm the time and realizing, holy cannoli, games kick in less than 10 minutes. And as everyone knows, I like to spend that last 5 minutes counting down on the red zone with my children. Because at some point I have to be a dad, and that's my 5 minutes a week of where I'm a dad. That's so sad to say. It's not the only 5, but it's my favorite 5 minutes of the week. Gouda, thank you for another amazing show. Josh Hook out there in the ethos, thank you for another great show as always. And folks, thank you for joining us. You can find our work, banksterdfs.com, $3.99 a week, get you access to everything. All of our articles, all of our player pools. Did I mention award-winning articles? And hopefully even more award-winning articles. Player pools, and, of course, the best Slack chat in the business. We cover every sport, major sports, minor sports, niche sports, whatever, college sports, whatever you want. We do it. We cover it. We'll talk about anything. Slack chat's open 24/7. It's pretty much rolling 24/7. $3.99 a week. You can find him at the Big Gouda. On Twitter, you can find me at Bankster17. And you can find us on YouTube. Just look up my name, like, share, subscribe. Click the notification icon. We will not be going live Friday night. We will be back live next Sunday morning, but you do not have to wait till then to talk to us. Just come join the fun. Banksterdfs.com. We'll see you guys there. Good luck. I hope to see those green screens. We'll catch you later.